Accumulating merit versus preserving merit. Have you ever noticed something puzzling in life? There are people who seem to do everything right. They give to charity, they help others, they speak kindly, and they always appear to be doing good deeds. Yet, strangely, their lives are still full of hardships. They get sick, their families fall apart, or they constantly run into obstacles. And then you look around and see others, people who may not do grand acts of generosity, who live more quietly, but their lives flow with ease. They seem to walk through difficulties with a kind of invisible protection. Why is that? Isn't life supposed to reward the good and punish the bad? Why does it feel so unfair sometimes? The answer, according to Buddhist wisdom, lies in a subtle but powerful truth. Accumulating merit and preserving merit are two very different things. You see, many of us are taught from a young age, do good and you will receive good. It's like a spiritual equation we believe in without question. But if life were really that simple, then everyone who ever gave a donation, volunteered their time, or spoke kindly would automatically be living a blessed and trouble-free life. And we know that's not the case. Here's the deeper layer. Merit is like water you pour into a vessel. But if that vessel is cracked, no matter how much water you add, it will keep leaking. You can accumulate all the merit in the world, but if you don't know how to preserve it, if you live in ways that drain or waste it, then you'll still end up empty. Think about it. Maybe you've had times in your life when you work hard, you gave your best, you treated people well, yet somehow everything fell apart. You might have even wondered, why is life so unfair to me? Haven't I done enough good? But the truth is, goodness is not just about adding more, it's also about protecting what you already have. Let me ask you something. Have you ever known someone who is generous, but also quick-tempered? Someone who donates money to help the poor, but then treats their own family with harshness? Or maybe someone who prays and meditates, but constantly brags about how spiritual they are? In those cases, the merit is real. They are planting good seeds. But at the same time, they are unknowingly tearing holes in their own vessel through anger, pride, or attachment. This is why the Buddha often reminded his disciples, merit is not only created by what you do, but also preserved, or destroyed, by how you live. Let me share a short story from Buddhist tradition. There was once a wealthy man who donated generously to the poor. People admired him and praised him. Yet, after his death, his children quarreled, his wealth vanished, and his family line collapsed. People were shocked. Why would such a good man leave behind so much suffering? A wise monk explained, he accumulated merit through giving, but he didn't preserve it. His pride, his arrogance, his lack of mindfulness created cracks that drained his blessings away. When I first heard that story, it struck me deeply, because I realized, how often do we focus on adding more money, more success, more good deeds, without noticing the holes in our lives where all of that is leaking away? Here's another way to picture it. Imagine you're filling a jar with water. Every day, you pour more in, but the jar has tiny cracks at the bottom. No matter how much you add, the water level never rises. That's what life feels like for so many of us. We work, we strive, we give, we try to be kind. But if we don't learn how to preserve what we've already gathered, our health, our peace, our inner dignity, then the jar will always seem empty. And this is not just a Buddhist idea, it's a human truth. You can find echoes of it everywhere. In psychology, they talk about emotional leakage. You can earn recognition and love, but if you carry unhealed wounds, you end up sabotaging your relationships. In finance, they say, it's not just how much you make, it's how much you keep. Someone can earn millions, but if they spend recklessly, they're still broke. And in spiritual life, it's the same. You can accumulate endless merit, but if you don't know how to hold it, you'll find yourself empty-handed. So here's the heart of the question. Are we only busy accumulating, or are we also learning to preserve? That's what we're going to explore in this video. The profound difference between accumulating merit and preserving merit, and how this simple but overlooked truth can change the way you live your life. Because maybe the reason your life feels stuck is not because you haven't done enough good, but because you haven't learned how to protect the good you've already created. The wealthy man who gave but lost everything. Let me take you back to an old story. A story that feels ancient, yet strangely familiar, because if we look closely, we can still see it playing out around us today. There was once a wealthy man, known in his village for his generosity. Whenever famine struck, he opened his storehouses. He would give away sacks of rice and grain to families who had nothing left. People admired him deeply. They called him a benefactor, a savior, even a saint. His name was spoken with reverence in every household. In the eyes of the world, he was a man rich not only in possessions but in virtue. After all, what could be nobler than giving to those who suffer? What could be more blessed than feeding the hungry? And yet, when his life came to an end, something unexpected happened. Instead of leaving behind a flourishing family, loyal children, and a respected legacy, he died alone. His wealth scattered. His children fought bitterly, each one taking their share and then turning against the others. The family broke apart. Within a few years, no one even remembered his name. The villagers who once praised him were stunned. They whispered among themselves, "How could this be? He gave so much, he helped so many. Why would his life end in such loneliness and decline?" It feels unfair, doesn't it? Almost unsettling. Because somewhere deep inside, we carry this belief: if I do good, life should reward me. If I am kind, my end should be peaceful. If I am generous, my children should inherit blessings. And when the story doesn't unfold that way, it shakes us. This is when the Buddha's wisdom steps in. He explained, merit is not only about accumulation. It must also be preserved. In other words, the wealthy man had indeed accumulated vast merit through his generosity. Every act of giving planted seeds of goodness. But while he was giving outwardly, he neglected something just as important: protecting and nurturing the merit he already had. His pride in being a benefactor, his attachment to wealth, his hidden temper, and perhaps his lack of mindfulness in daily conduct, these were like cracks in the vessel of his life. So even though he kept pouring water in, it leaked out just as fast. Now, pause with me for a moment. Does this story sound like something you've seen in real life? Maybe you've known someone who gave to charity, supported many causes, or helped friends and neighbors, but in their personal life, they struggled. Their relationships were broken, their family in conflict, their heart unsettled. It makes you wonder, what happened? Or perhaps you've heard about wealthy philanthropists, people who donate millions, yet their own children grow distant, their health deteriorates, or scandals tarnish their name. The world praises them for giving, but behind the curtain, their lives are fragile. This is not to judge or to diminish their good deeds. Generosity is powerful, but the lesson here is subtle. Goodness is not just about doing more. It is also about living in a way that doesn't undo the goodness you've already planted. Think of it like gardening. The wealthy man sowed plenty of seeds, enough to grow a vast, flourishing field. But if you plant seeds and never protect them from weeds, from pests, from drought, the harvest will fail. Giving is planting. Preserving is protecting. Both are needed. When I first encountered this teaching, I reflected on my own life. I thought about times when I gave, when I tried to help, when I worked hard to build something. But then, through anger, impatience, or careless words, I ended up undoing much of the good I had tried to create. It's humbling to realize how easy it is to pour water into a leaking jar. And maybe you've experienced this too. Have you ever done something generous for someone, but then followed it with a burst of irritation or a sense of superiority? I helped them, but why aren't they grateful? Or, I gave, so I deserve recognition. In that moment, the act of generosity still counts, but the merit begins to slip away. The Buddha's teaching reminds us that merit is like a flame. You can light many lamps, but if you carelessly let the wind in, the flames will go out. The wealthy man lit many lamps for others, but his own winds, his inner storms, extinguished them. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just about Buddhism. This truth echoes across many aspects of life. In psychology, we talk about self-sabotage. You can do years of hard work, but if you carry unresolved habits or emotions, you can undermine your own success. In business, people say, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. Earning millions means nothing if you spend recklessly. And in relationships, you can win love and trust, but if you don't protect it with care, it can disappear overnight. The wealthy man's story is timeless because it shows us that generosity alone is not enough. To truly live a life of blessing, we must pair generosity with humility, mindfulness, and discipline. Without those, merit slips through our fingers. So, the next time you hear about someone who seems to do everything right yet still faces misfortune, remember this story. It's not necessarily that their goodness was wasted. It's that preserving goodness requires as much wisdom as creating it. And here's the question I want to leave you with today. In your own life, are you only planting seeds, or are you also protecting the field? Because life is not only about how much good we add, but how carefully we hold on to what we've already built. Planting seeds of goodness. So let's talk about what it really means to accumulate merit. In Buddhism, the word merit can sound a little mystical, almost like something abstract. But if we break it down, it's actually very simple and very human. Merit is the invisible result of doing good, the positive energy, the favorable conditions, the unseen blessings that grow out of our actions. Think of it this way. Every time you speak kindly instead of harshly, every time you offer help to someone in need, every time you act with honesty instead of deceit, you are planting a seed. These seeds don't just vanish, they fall into the soil of your life. And like any seed, in time, they sprout. That sprouting might look like opportunities arriving when you least expect them, relationships that nourish you, health that supports you, or simply a deep sense of peace that can't be shaken by circumstance. Accumulating merit, then, is really just the act of planting seeds of goodness, again and again, through our choices. When we give money to charity, yes, that is planting. When we offer a smile to a stranger who looks heavy with worry, that too is planting. When we forgive instead of holding a grudge, we are planting. And even when we choose silence instead of gossip, that's planting. But here's the thing, planting is not always grand or dramatic. Sometimes we think accumulating merit means we must donate millions, build temples, or perform big acts of service. Yet, from the Buddha's perspective, the smallest action done with a pure heart can carry enormous weight. A glass of water given to someone thirsty, if offered with sincerity, can ripple in ways you may never see. I once heard a story of a monk who said, "If you want to know what your future looks like, look at the seeds you're planting today." That struck me, because so often, we are looking for miracles, for life to suddenly shift, when in truth, our everyday choices are already shaping the miracle that is to come. Now let's make this practical. Imagine your life as a kind of spiritual bank account. Let's call it the bank of merit. Every good act you do is like a deposit. When you help your neighbor, you're depositing. When you comfort a friend, you're depositing. When you volunteer your time, you're depositing. Slowly, the account grows. And when tough times arrive, as they always do, it's like withdrawing from that account. Merit cushions the fall. But here's the catch. This bank is not always secure. Unlike a real bank, which locks away your money, the bank of merit can lose value if you're not careful. Anger can drain it. Arrogance can drain it. Cruel words can drain it. Which is why the Buddha didn't just talk about accumulating, he emphasized preserving. Because what good is a full account if it leaks every day? Let me ask you, have you ever met someone who is very charitable but also very proud? They give, but they also make sure everyone knows they gave. They remind people, "I did this, I donated that, I helped here." On the surface, they are depositing into the bank of merit. But beneath the surface, the pride, the need for recognition, is already withdrawing from the account. Or think about this in another way. Suppose you save money diligently but also gamble recklessly. You put in $1,000 but lose $2,000. You're always hustling, always depositing, but never really growing wealth. That's how merit works. You can spend your life planting seeds, but if you burn the soil with anger or water it with arrogance, the harvest will never come. When I reflect on my own life, I realize that many times I thought I was doing good, but in truth, I was secretly undoing it. I gave with expectation. I helped with impatience. I spoke kindly, but then bragged about it later. And it hit me, it's not just about doing good things, it's about the spirit in which you do them, and the consistency with which you protect them afterward. Accumulating merit is beautiful because it gives us agency. No one is too small or too powerless to plant seeds of goodness. You don't need wealth, status, or fame to start. Every single day offers opportunities. Letting someone merge into traffic, listening without interrupting, sharing food, offering a word of encouragement. These are not small. They are deposits that, over time, shape the fabric of your destiny. But here's the secret most people forget. You can't just keep depositing without learning to preserve. If you focus only on planting without protecting, you'll always feel like life is unfair, like no matter how much good you do, it never pays off. So here's the reflection. How are you planting seeds of merit in your daily life? And how are you protecting them from being wasted? Because to accumulate merit is to trust in the law of cause and effect, but to preserve it is to live with mindfulness so that the seeds can grow. One without the other is incomplete. The Buddha once said, "Drop by drop, the water pot is filled." In the same way, drop by drop, act by act, our bank of merit grows. But the pot only stays full if we stop poking holes in it. So, when you think of accumulating merit, don't just imagine the grand gestures. Look to the little drops. The smile, the kindness, the restraint, the honesty. These are the true deposits. And remember, your account is only as strong as your ability to keep it intact. Explaining preserving merit. Protecting what you've planted. If accumulating merit is about planting seeds of goodness, then preserving merit is about making sure those seeds actually grow. Think about it. A farmer doesn't just scatter seeds and walk away. He watches the soil, he waters it, he keeps out weeds and pests. Because if he doesn't, the crop never matures, no matter how much he planted. That's the essence of preserving merit. It's living in such a way that the blessings you've built don't quietly leak away. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who starts a business with honesty, fairness, and hard work. They rise up, and prosperity comes. That's the fruit of accumulated merit. But then, with success, something shifts. They begin spending lavishly, treating others with arrogance, forgetting the humility and kindness that built their foundation. Within a few years, the wealth that was so bright begins to dim. Relationships sour, health weakens, fortunes slip. Why? Because they didn't preserve their merit. This is a pattern we've all seen, not just in ancient stories, but right now, in the world around us. Haven't you noticed? Some people rise fast, glowing with success, only to fall just as quickly. Others, however, seem to have a steady kind of grace. Their prosperity, their happiness, lasts. The difference is often not in how much they accumulated, but in how well they preserved. So, what drains merit? The Buddha spoke of things like greed, arrogance, anger, gossip, cruelty. Think of them as termites that eat away at the beams of a house. You can build the most beautiful home, but if termites feast in the walls, eventually the house collapses. Let me make this even more relatable. Think about money. You work hard, you save diligently, that's accumulation. But if you also gamble recklessly, overspend on things you don't need, or neglect a budget, your wealth slips through your fingers. In the same way, you can spend years planting seeds of good deeds, but if you live in anger, boastfulness, or contempt, you're spending faster than you're saving. I'll be honest, I've seen this in my own life. There were times when I did something generous, but afterward, I spoiled it with pride. I helped someone, but then silently thought, I'm better than them. Or I gave time to someone, but then complained behind their back. And I realized I wasn't preserving anything. I was planting with one hand and uprooting with the other. This is why humility is so powerful. Humility is like the fence that keeps the field safe. Gratitude is the water that nourishes the soil. Mindfulness is the sunlight that allows growth. Without these, no amount of planting will bring harvest. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to live a life full of ease, not necessarily rich, but content, loved, respected, while others, despite doing good, always seem to struggle? It might be because one is planting but not preserving. There's a Buddhist parable that says, accumulating merit is like filling a pot with water, drop by drop. Preserving merit is making sure the pot doesn't have holes at the bottom. Because what good is filling a pot if it leaks? Now, what does preserving merit look like in our daily lives? It's choosing simplicity instead of extravagance. It's remembering kindness when success could make us arrogant. It's restraining anger when we are provoked. It's speaking words that heal rather than wound. It's practicing gratitude for what we already have. All of these are ways of guarding the soil, protecting the crop, keeping the pot whole. One of the most striking things I've observed is that people who preserve their merit often have a quiet kind of power. You can feel it when you're around them. They don't need to brag, they don't need to dominate. Their presence itself is calming, grounding. Why? Because they have not only planted seeds of goodness but also protected them. And here's the beautiful part. Preserving merit doesn't mean living a joyless, rigid life. It's not about denying yourself. It's about balance. You can enjoy wealth without wasting it. You can be successful without arrogance. You can be strong without cruelty. Preserving merit is really about protecting your blessings with wisdom. I once read a line that said, if you want to know what kind of life you'll have tomorrow, look at how you're protecting your blessings today. That stayed with me. because it made me see that merit isn't just about the big gestures, giving, serving, building. It's also about the small, daily acts of restraint, gratitude, and humility that keep the blessings alive. So let's reflect together. How are you living in a way that protects your merit? Are there termites in your life, anger, arrogance, wastefulness, that are quietly eating away at your blessings? Because planting the seeds is not enough. If you want a lasting harvest of peace, of happiness, of abundance, you must also guard the field. That is the true art, not only accumulating, but preserving. The teaching of the Buddha. Merit needs both giving and inner discipline. There's a profound teaching from the Buddha that often gets overlooked. He said, "Giving without keeping the precepts makes merit difficult to endure." What does that mean? At first glance, it may sound strange. Isn't generosity enough? If I give money to charity, if I feed the hungry, if I donate my time, shouldn't that alone secure my blessings? But here's the truth. Generosity is only half of the picture. The other half is the purity of your mind and actions, what in Buddhism we call keeping the precepts. That means refraining from harming life, avoiding dishonesty, staying away from greed and lust, restraining anger, and not clouding the mind with intoxicants. Think of it this way. Making merit through giving is like filling up a beautiful jar with water. But if that jar has cracks, if it leaks, no matter how much water you pour in, it won't stay full. The cracks represent a life without discipline, a mind full of greed, hatred, or delusion. Have you ever met someone who was outwardly very generous, but in private, they were cruel, angry, or careless with others' feelings? Maybe they gave a lot to their community, but at home, their family felt neglected or even mistreated. It doesn't mean their generosity was worthless, but without inner discipline, the blessings they accumulated don't last. I once heard a story of a wealthy man who donated to temples, built schools, even sponsored hospitals. But he also lived in constant anger, berating his employees, cheating in business deals, indulging recklessly. His name was praised in public, but in private his life was turmoil. His children didn't respect him, his health broke down, and his wealth scattered after his death. He had poured water into the jar, but the cracks were never sealed. This is exactly what the Buddha meant. True merit, lasting merit, requires both planting and protecting. Giving is planting. Keeping the precepts is protecting. Now let's bring this into our modern lives. You don't have to be a monk or a saint. Preserving merit isn't about perfection, it's about mindfulness. For example, you donate to a cause, but you also practice honesty in your daily work. You give time to help others, but you also refrain from gossip that harms reputations. You share your abundance, but you also control your anger when provoked. These are not glamorous acts. No one applauds you for resisting the urge to insult someone who insulted you first. No one notices when you walk away instead of fighting. But these quiet acts of restraint are what keep your jar from cracking. Let me ask you this. How many of us work hard, build wealth, accumulate blessings, only to lose them through anger, reckless choices, or addictions? How many families collapse not because they lacked money, but because they lacked respect, patience, and restraint? That's why the Buddha's teaching is timeless. Generosity is not complete unless it is supported by moral discipline. Without both, merit evaporates. Here's another way to see it. Imagine you attending a garden. Giving is like planting flowers, bright, beautiful, full of life. But precepts are like the fence and the soil. Without them, animals trample, weeds choke, and storms destroy. What good are flowers if they can't last the season? And don't misunderstand, the precepts aren't punishment, they're protection. They protect your mind from turmoil. They protect your relationships from decay. They protect your blessings from slipping away unnoticed. I'll share something personal. There was a time when I focused so much on doing good that I forgot to check my inner state. I volunteered, donated, helped others, and yet I also carried resentment, judged people harshly, spoke words I regretted. And the result? I felt drained, not uplifted. That's when I realized, giving without inner discipline is like running a race with a hole in your shoe. You're moving, but you're wearing yourself down. So maybe we need to pause and ask ourselves, are we truly guarding our merit? Are we careful with not just what we give, but how we live? This teaching of the Buddha is actually liberating. It means that you don't need endless money to accumulate merit. You don't need to make grand donations to temples or charities. Sometimes, the greatest preservation of merit is simply not harming, not lying, not letting anger control you. Sometimes the most powerful act is restraint, because when you live with discipline, every small act of generosity multiplies. A kind word, a helping hand, a simple gift, when supported by purity of mind, it becomes lasting. And maybe that's the deeper secret. Merit is not just about what you do for others. It's also about what you refuse to do, refusing cruelty, refusing greed, refusing hate. So let me leave you with a question. In your own life, what are the cracks in the jar? What are the little habits, the impulses, the choices that might be draining your blessings? And how might your life change if you not only gave more, but also guarded more? Because as the Buddha taught, generosity may fill the jar, but only discipline keeps it whole. Everyday examples. Why some people's blessings last and others fade. Sometimes the most profound truths reveal themselves not in scriptures, not in lofty temples, but in the simple way we observe life around us. Take a moment and look around. Maybe in your own circle, you know someone who is constantly involved in charity projects. They donate, they sponsor, they volunteer. Their names appear on banners, their photos are posted online, their efforts are widely recognized. Yet, despite all their good deeds, their lives seem oddly unsettled. They're often angry, quick to judge, quick to criticize. Their relationships feel tense. They carry stress like a constant shadow. It's almost as if the good they plan today with one hand, they uproot tomorrow with the other. And then, on the other side, there's someone far less visible. They may not donate millions, they may not run big charities, they may not be applauded on social media, but they live quietly, with a gentle spirit. They treat others with respect. They speak with humility. They know how to step back, to let others shine, to keep peace in small ways. And strangely, or maybe not strangely at all, their lives feel harmonious. They may not be the richest, but there's a kind of deep wealth in their presence. People trust them. People feel safe around them. Their blessings endure. Doesn't that make you wonder? Why does one person's merit fade like water spilled on hot sand, while another person's blessings grow like shade under an old oak tree? It comes back to what we've been talking about, the balance between accumulating merit and preserving it. The first person plants seeds but never protects the soil. The second may plant fewer seeds, but they care for the ground, guard the garden, and keep it fertile. I once witnessed this very clearly. A man in my neighborhood was known for giving to the poor. He sponsored scholarships, donated food, helped during disasters. But at the same time, he was harsh with his employees, impatient with his children, condescending toward anyone who disagreed with him. Over the years, despite his donations, people stopped trusting him. His family drifted apart. His business declined. And those who once praised him began to whisper about his arrogance. It was a tragic lesson. Merit cannot outlast the weight of a careless mind. But I also remember an elderly woman, widowed young, who never had much money to give. She sold vegetables in the market. And yet, her kindness was legendary. She never cheated on the scale. She often gave extra to those who couldn't pay. She listened when others needed comfort. She lived simply, humbly, with respect for everyone, even the beggars who passed by. And the result? Her children grew up loving and united. Her neighbors adored her, and even after her passing, people still speak of her with warmth. She had very little, yet she preserved every ounce of merit she created. So maybe the lesson is this: greatness isn't measured by how loudly we give, but by how quietly we live. Now, let me bring this back to you. Have you ever noticed that when you're harsh, judgmental, or arrogant, something in your life feels drained? Maybe opportunities slip away, maybe relationships cool, maybe peace itself leaves you. And then, when you're humble, when you choose patience over anger, when you choose to step back instead of shouting forward, life feels lighter, fuller, safer. That's no coincidence. That's the invisible balance of merit at work. We live in a culture that often glorifies the big gesture. Huge donations, grand volunteer projects, public recognition. And while those things are beautiful, we sometimes forget the quiet merit of humility, kindness, patience. Those don't get headlines, but they are the roots that keep the tree standing when storms come. Think about it. Who do you actually enjoy being around? The wealthy donor who criticizes everyone, or the humble neighbor who treats you kindly? Whose blessings feel real to you? So the next time you feel like you don't have enough to give, or that your good deeds are too small to matter, remember this. merit isn't just about quantity, it's about endurance. And endurance comes from character. Generosity may earn you applause, but humility and kindness, they earn you trust, peace, and blessings that don't fade. So let me leave you with this thought. What's more important, giving in a way that shines brightly for a moment, or living in a way that sustains blessings for a lifetime? Because sometimes, the greatest charity is not the money you give, but the peace you refuse to destroy. The deeper lesson. Accumulating merit versus preserving merit. Let me share with you an image that might stay in your mind for a long time. Imagine you have a clay jar in your home. Every day, you pour water into it. Carefully, consistently. That's what it means to accumulate merit. Every good deed you do, every kind word, every act of generosity is like adding water to that jar. Drop by drop, the jar fills. But here's the problem. What if you never cover it? The sun beats down, the air is dry, and little by little, the water evaporates. Even worse, maybe dust falls in, maybe insects find their way inside. Before long, what you once filled with effort is empty again. That's the difference between accumulating blessings and preserving them. One is pouring the water, the other is putting on the lid. Without the lid, all your effort disappears into thin air. Think about it. How many times in life have we worked hard to achieve something, only to lose it because we didn't protect it? You save money, but then live recklessly, spend without care, and the savings vanish. You build a relationship, but neglect kindness, and the bond weakens. You gain health through discipline, but abandon balance, and the strength fades. It's the same with merit. The good we create can vanish if we don't guard it with mindfulness, with restraint, with humility. There's a wisdom in this metaphor that's both simple and profound. Anyone can pour water, but only the wise remember to cover the jar. Now, let me ask you something personal. How are you managing your own jar of blessings? Are you someone who pours water generously but leaves the lid wide open? Maybe you donate, you help others, you show kindness. But then, you let anger boil inside, you speak harsh words, you gossip, you act from pride. That's the open lid. And slowly, your merit evaporates. Or maybe you pour less water, but you guard it well. You're not in the spotlight, you don't perform grand gestures, but you live with care, you avoid needless harm, you value peace. Your jar isn't overflowing, but it stays full because you cover it. Which life feels more stable to you? I'll share a small story from my own life. Years ago, I was working with a colleague who was extremely generous with his time and money. He was always volunteering, always offering help, but he also had a temper. In meetings, he would lash out at people. At home, his marriage suffered because of his impatience. One day he confessed to me, "I don't understand. I'm doing all this good, but why does my life feel so empty?" And I thought of that jar. He was pouring water every day, but the lid was never on. Contrast that with a teacher I once knew. She wasn't wealthy, and her deeds weren't flashy, but she was calm. She treated everyone with respect, even in difficult situations. She avoided gossip, avoided harming others, and her life radiated a quiet happiness, like a jar that never ran dry. So here's the lesson. The art of life isn't only about adding more, but about protecting what's already there. Our culture often tells us that progress means accumulation. More achievements, more money, more recognition, more good deeds. But wisdom whispers something different. Preservation is just as important as accumulation. Ask yourself, what's the point of pouring endlessly if you're always leaking? And here's where it gets subtle. Preserving blessings doesn't mean clinging tightly or living in fear of losing. It means living mindfully, with a sense of balance. It means practicing patience when anger rises. It means staying humble when success arrives. It means choosing compassion when judgment feels easier. It means remembering that silence is sometimes more powerful than words. These small choices are like putting the lid on your jar every day. The Buddha once said that true wisdom is knowing not just how to give, but how to sustain. Because giving without wisdom can become empty, but giving with preservation becomes eternal. Think of your life right now as that clay jar. Look at how much you've poured in already. Your struggles, your kindness, your sacrifices, your growth. Isn't it worth protecting? Isn't it worth keeping full, so that you can draw from it in times of need? Maybe the real secret to a blessed life isn't how much we do, but how well we guard what we've already done. So let me leave you with a reflection. Tonight, when you go to bed, Ask yourself, did I put the lid on my jar today? Or did I leave it open? Because blessings aren't lost all at once. They slip away quietly, like water turning into vapor. And by the time we notice, sometimes the jar is already dry. Be wise. Pour with one hand. Cover with the other. That is how blessings endure. Application in today's life. Let me ask you something. In our modern world, when you hear the phrase doing good, what comes to mind first? For most of us, it's big, visible acts. Donating to charities. Volunteering at an event. Sponsoring children in need. Starting a non-profit. These things are beautiful, and they matter. They fill the jar, like we talked about before. But here's where many of us get caught. We become obsessed with the doing. We want to do more, give more, achieve more, thinking that blessings are measured only by quantity. And in the race to accumulate, we often forget to stop and look inward. Let me share something I've observed. I've met people who give huge donations, and yet, the way they live quietly drains their blessings. Maybe they post about their good deeds online, hoping for recognition. Maybe they get irritated easily, snapping at people around them. Maybe they fall into the trap of pride, looking down on others who give less. Do you see what's happening here? They're pouring water into the jar, but with the other hand, they're poking holes in the bottom. And it makes me wonder, what's the point of giving away a fortune if arrogance or anger takes it all back? This is why preserving blessings in today's world looks a little different than we might expect. It's not always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's in the smallest, quietest acts, the ones no one else even sees. Choosing to stay calm in traffic instead of screaming at the driver who cut you off. Smiling gently at the cashier who looks exhausted after a 10-hour shift. Holding your tongue when gossip feels tempting. Saying thank you with genuine gratitude, even for something small. These might not seem like much, but each one is like putting the lid on the jar. They stop your blessings from evaporating. There's a saying I once heard, character is how you treat those who can do nothing for you. Think about that. In a culture where so much is about performance, about showing the world how generous or successful you are, the real measure is often invisible. It's not how many zeros were on your donation check. It's how much kindness you offered in moments when no one was clapping. And maybe you've noticed this in your own life. Sometimes it's harder to preserve blessings than to create them. It's easier to donate once a year than to bite your tongue when your spouse annoys you. It's easier to give money than to give patience. But here's the twist. Those small acts of preservation are just as powerful, maybe even more, because they're practiced daily, and they shape who you become. Let's make it practical. You might not have the time or money to do grand acts of charity right now. But what if, every morning, you simply set an intention? Today, I will not let anger steal my blessings. Today, I will practice humility. Today, I will guard my jar. It doesn't sound dramatic. It won't get you applause. But over time, it builds a life where your blessings are steady, secure, and lasting. I'll give you a personal story. There was a time in my own life when I was obsessed with doing more. More projects, more generosity, more activity. I thought, if I just keep adding, life will get better. But I was exhausted. I snapped at people. I judged others harshly. And inside, I felt empty. One day, a mentor said to me, "You're busy filling your jar, but your lid is wide open." That hit me like a bell ringing. I realized the problem wasn't that I wasn't giving enough. The problem was that I wasn't guarding what I already had. That day, I began practicing smaller things. Patience, humility, silence. And slowly, my life began to feel different. The jar stayed full. So let me ask you directly, in your own daily life, what are the little leaks that are draining your blessings? Is it impatience? Is it arrogance? Is it wastefulness, buying things just to show off? Is it the habit of criticizing, of judging, of complaining? Be honest with yourself. Because if you can name the leaks, you can start to cover them. The truth is, preserving blessings in modern life doesn't require radical changes. You don't have to leave your job, give away everything you own, or meditate in a cave for 10 years. It might just mean pausing before you speak. It might mean remembering that the person in front of you, even the rude one, even the stranger, is fighting battles you can't see. And sometimes, preserving blessings means choosing silence over being right. That's a hard one, isn't it? But think about how many arguments, how much pride, how much unnecessary drama could be avoided if we simply chose peace over ego. Here's the paradox. We live in a world that glorifies action, productivity, achievement, hustle, and yes, action matters. But in the deepest sense, wisdom often looks like restraint. It's not always about adding more. Sometimes it's about losing less. Because what good is it to fill a jar if it's leaking faster than you can pour? So maybe the real challenge of our time is not how can I do more good, but how can I stop wasting the good I already have? And the answer might be as simple as this: one kind smile, one act of patience, one moment of humility, one breath before anger takes over. That's it. Small acts, invisible to most, but powerful enough to keep your jar full for lifetime. So tonight, as you reflect on your day, ask yourself, where did I keep the lid on my jar? And where did I let it leak? The more you ask, the more aware you'll become. And slowly, almost quietly, your life will shift. Because in the end, blessings aren't just built in big, public moments. They're preserved in the silent, private ones, the ones only your heart knows. And that, my friends, is how you live a life where blessings don't just come and go, they stay. Closing message. Let's take a deep breath together. We've walked through so many ideas already about creating blessings, preserving them, and the subtle ways life can either nourish or drain our jar. But now, I want to leave you with one final thought, something simple yet profound. Doing good is important. Yes, it matters. It creates seeds, it opens doors, it draws light into our lives. That's what we might call accumulating blessings. But if we never learn to protect what we've gathered, it will disappear, as quickly as rain sinking into desert sand. Think about a farmer. Imagine this person wakes up at dawn, tills the soil, plants seeds, waters them faithfully. Day after day, they labor, sweat dripping from their brow. But then, they leave the field completely open. No fence, no scarecrow, no protection. What happens? Birds swoop in. Animals eat the sprouts. Weeds choke the growth. And when harvest season comes, the field is nearly bare. That, my friends, is what life looks like when we focus only on doing good deeds, but forget about preserving the good in our daily character. Let me put it this way. Accumulating blessings is about planting. Preserving blessings is about guarding the harvest. Both matter. But if you had to choose, preservation may even be more critical. Because what use is planting if you never reap? And I want to pause here with a question for you. Have you noticed moments when you've been pouring your energy into doing good things, but somehow it still feels like your life is leaking? Maybe you give generously, but pride sneaks in and makes you compare yourself to others. Maybe you practice kindness, but impatience robs it the very next day. Maybe you work hard for your family, but anger at small frustrations erodes the peace at home. If so, you're not alone. This is the common human condition. We build and lose, plant and wither, over and over again. But the wise, they learn the secret. They don't just sow seeds, they guard the field. They don't just fill the jar, they keep the lid on tight. This is what wisdom looks like. Not just action, but balance. Not just giving, but also keeping. I'll tell you something from my own journey. For years, I thought the answer was always to add more. More generosity, more projects, more giving. I imagined that the universe was like a scoreboard, and the more points I racked up, the more blessed I'd feel. But the truth? That game never ends. And no matter how much I added, there were always leaks. It was only when I started asking, where am I losing what I already have, that life began to change. I realized that sometimes wisdom isn't about addition. It's about subtraction. Subtracting pride. Subtracting anger. Subtracting wastefulness. And suddenly, the blessings I had stopped vanishing. So let me bring us back to the metaphor. Blessings are like rain. If they fall on rock, they roll away. If they fall on sand, they vanish quickly. But if they fall on fertile soil, and we protect that soil, the rain gives life for a long, long time. Which soil is your life right now? This, I think, is the heart of the teaching. Accumulating blessings fills your life. Preserving blessings sustains your life. And the truly wise, the ones we admire across history and in our own neighborhoods, are those who do both. They plant seeds and protect the harvest. They fill the jar and cover it. They give generously, but they also live with humility, patience, and restraint. Here's a practical way to remember it. Every day, do one thing to add blessings. And every day, do one thing to protect them. Maybe you donate to a cause or help someone at work. That's adding. Then you resist the urge to brag about it or judge someone else. That's protecting. Maybe you offer encouragement to a friend. That's adding. Then you choose patience instead of snapping at your child later that evening. That's protecting. See how the two balance each other? Together, they create a cycle of abundance that doesn't just come and go. It stays. Now, before we close, let me leave you with one image that's been with me for years. Life is like a garden. You can spend your whole life planting, watering, and nurturing. But without offense, the fruits will be eaten before you can taste them. The wise gardener knows, planting and protecting are equally sacred. So ask yourself, what seeds am I planting today? And how am I protecting what I've already grown? Your answers to those two questions will shape not just your blessings, but your whole life. So, here is the final takeaway. Yes, do good. Yes, accumulate blessings. But never forget, preserving them is even more vital. Because if blessings are not guarded, they fade away, leaving us empty-handed, like rain vanishing into sand. The wise live differently. They don't just scatter seeds, they watch over the harvest. They don't just pour water, they close the lid. They live with both hands, one giving, one protecting. And that, my friends, is how a life of true abundance is built. And now, I want to leave you with a gentle curiosity. If preserving blessings is just as important as creating them, what does that mean for the way we handle relationships? Because blessings are not just money or luck, they're also the people in our lives. That's what we'll explore in the next video. How to preserve the blessings found in human connections. Don't miss it. Teaser for the next video. So here we are, my friends, at the edge of today's reflection. We've walked together through the ideas of creating blessings, preserving them, and the wisdom of living with both hands, one giving, one protecting. But before we say goodbye, let me leave you with a thought. If creating blessings is like pouring water into a jar, and preserving them is like sealing the lid, then I want to ask you, what are the tiny cracks in your jar? Because even if you pour carefully, even if you close the lid, a jar with cracks will still leak. And in real life, those cracks often come in the form of small, everyday habits, the things we overlook, the attitudes we excuse, the patterns we repeat without noticing. Think about it. How many times have you felt like life was finally flowing? You were doing all the right things, and yet, the peace didn't last. Maybe it was a sharp word spoken in anger that undid hours of kindness. Maybe it was resentment held too long, eating away at your joy. Maybe it was comparison, jealousy, or the quiet habit of complaining. None of these feel dramatic in the moment, but like water dripping from a crack, over time, they drain away even the greatest store of blessings. And here's the part that stings. These leaks often come from the places we least expect. We might think we are spiritual because we meditate or pray, but then we gossip about a coworker and wonder why peace feels far away. We might think we are generous because we donate, but then we post online just to get recognition, and suddenly the gift feels lighter, emptier. We might think we are successful because we work hard, but then we burn bridges with impatience, and success turns fragile. It's not the grand disasters that undo us. It's the tiny habits, the slow leaks, the things that seem harmless. That's why I believe the next step in our journey is to shine a light on those habits, to name them, to see them clearly. Because once you see a crack, you can seal it. Once you see a leak, you can stop it. And that is what our next video will explore together. We are going to look at the everyday patterns that quietly, silently, eat away at the blessings in our lives. Not to judge ourselves, but to understand. Not to shame, but to grow. So let me leave you with this question to carry in your heart until then. What habits might be silently draining the blessings you've worked so hard to build? Is it impatience? Pride? A tendency to complain? The craving to always show off? Or maybe something as simple as not taking care of your health, your body, your rest? Think about it. Reflect gently. Not with guilt, but with curiosity. Because the cracks you find may be the exact key to keeping your jar full. In the next video, we'll walk through these habits together. I'll share stories, examples, and insights that might surprise you, and hopefully give you practical ways to protect the goodness you already carry. So if you don't want your blessings to slip away unnoticed, if you truly want to live with abundance that lasts, then trust me, you'll want to be there. Because here's the truth. Life doesn't just ask us to add more. It asks us to guard what we have. And sometimes, the most powerful transformation comes not from doing more, but from leaking less. So, until then, hold this image close. A jar of water, steady, full, and sealed tight. That jar is your life. And in the days to come, together, we'll learn how to make sure not a single drop is wasted. I'll see you in the next video.